Parents can be your greatest allies or your biggest source of anxiety. The secret? It's all in how you communicate. So let's unpack the do's, the don'ts, and the what was I thinking moments on this edition of Classroom Coffee Break. I'm John Van Dusen, a longtime teacher, coach, and Army officer. And in this episode, we're going to talk about effective parent communication, building trust, and not tension. First, let's talk about why parent communication matters. And kind of the big picture here is you might have 30 students in your class. You might have 5 or 6 sections of 30 students in your class. So that one student to you may be one of 150, but to that parent, they are one of one. So it is very, very important that you understand that, because you're not just teaching students, you're teaching kids, children who have families, and to that family, they might be the most important thing in the world, as they should be. So think about if you have your own kids, how important they are to you. Remember that that's how important that all of your students are to their families, and you have to multiply by that, depending on grade level and subject, maybe by 20 if you have a small elementary class, or maybe by 200, depending on how many students you actually have in your building. So strong communication will help build trust, reduce conflict, and support student success, which is the overall goal here as teachers. So without strong parental communication, what happens? Well, you end up with misunderstandings, you end up with frustration on your part, on the student's part, and on the parent part, and the famous angry 10 p.m. email. I've received a few of those. One of them in particular, I had a parent that thought I called out their student specifically, and that was not the case. I'd actually given some direction. This was the first hour, and the tables were all supposed to be working independently. So as I'm going to each table, I realized that nobody has any idea what they're doing. My fault for not delivering good instructions of what I was supposed to do. So when I got to the last table and I asked them if they knew what they were doing, and it was obvious they didn't, I stopped the class. I got them back to where they needed to be with instruction, and then they went off and did their own thing, and they completed it fine. And that little incident did two things. One, it changed how I provided instruction for the rest of the day, and I didn't have that issue again. But because I ended with this specific table, and this student thought that because they didn't know what was happening, I stopped the whole class, they felt embarrassed. Even though nobody else in the class knew that they didn't know what they were doing. Nobody knew what they were doing. But I got that angry email at 10 o'clock at night, and my initial reaction was to respond right away. But I've been in this game long enough. I knew I'm just going to sleep on it, let it simmer for a second, think through how I want to respond. Because again, this student is this parent's most important person in the world. So I waited till the next morning. I sent out a respectful email that explained what had happened. I had asked if they wanted to talk more about it to please call me. I got an email back saying, no need to call. I actually ended up seeing one of the parents, the one that didn't send the email, but I saw them later in the hallway and had a little conversation, and everything was smoothed over. But that was an issue that I didn't even know that I could have communicated with that parent. So we had a misunderstanding. We had the angry email. That happens all the time. So I don't want to say all the time, but it happens. So the most important thing is to start that communication early, be honest with the parent, and you'll get through those tough emails. Angry emails also come when it comes to coaching. I know we talk a lot about teaching, but also coaching and maybe some Army officer stuff, but coaching, middle school football. I was coaching a game, and it was cold. It was rainy. We were getting our butts kicked, 45-7 or something ridiculous. And I had some younger players that hadn't been in the game yet. Gets to be the fourth quarter. I was like, hey, I need you to go in, play defensive back, play linebacker, play wherever. And I had a middle school student standing there cold, shivering, shook their head. No, I don't want to go in. So I respected that. I don't want to put a kid in a position where they're going to get hurt. And if they don't want to go in and they're cold and they're younger, I'm not going to put them in. So I didn't. So I had a player that didn't play that game. And it wasn't an angry email, it was an angry parent right after the game coming up telling me how terrible of a coach I was. And again, it would have been super easy to respond with, hey, your kid said they didn't want to go in, and then we'd have, an issue right there on the field. But I had established this early, and I said, excuse me, Mr. So-and-so, if we could please have this conversation tomorrow, exercising what we call the 24-hour rule, which is usually like a 12-hour rule. And he had my phone number, called me the next day. He said, hey, I talked to my son and I understand what happened now. Sorry for what happened on the field. So there was an issue where we just let a little time pass, more information. And basically it comes down to getting rid of those misunderstandings so that everybody's on the same sheet of music. You may disagree, but at least everybody is operating on the same information. In that case, that parent thought that I didn't play their kid on purpose, and I didn't play them because they did not want to go in. They were scared, which happens, right? And that young player went on to do great things in football. He just not that specific day. So just a way of help reducing those misunderstandings and that frustration. So let's talk about proactive communication. And this is something that I say start early with. Start strong. You can introduce yourself early, and there's some fun ways to do that. You can do it with the students, you can do it with the parents. I've seen newsletters sent home. When I had a student teacher, he actually made a little introduction video about himself, which was really neat because I was able to share that with the students. But the day before he showed up, I was able to send that home to the parents. And I think that's a technique I'm going to keep going with, is making a short little video so that it can be watched on the parents' own time, right? And just introducing yourself and the type of person you are. And I get put in this box all the time. They see that I'm an Army officer, been to Iraq, been to Afghanistan, like, oh, he must be tough and serious. And I am, but at the same time, you won't find anybody that likes to joke more than I do, except maybe Mr. Kleiman. So if you can help students and parents understand who you are, where you're coming from, and it doesn't have to be super personal, right? But kind of your journey through education, why you got into the profession, how you operate different things, how you want to be communicated with. Maybe you're a super texter. And I know that's some teachers in our building, they have 5,000 contacts in their phone because they're always texting parents. Some people ask that it be done through emails. Some people ask for a phone call. However you want to be communicated with and however you want to communicate with parents, you need to let them know. And on that note, use consistent methods of communication. I know trying to run the social media site for football, we have Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and it is difficult to maintain all of those things. So as a teacher, especially if you're just starting out, choose one or two tools that you're going to use consistently. And that can be email, that can be Remind, Class Dojo, newsletters. It can be something you send home in a backpack, especially with the younger grades. It can be Google Classroom. However you choose to communicate, just choose one or two ways to do that so that you can be consistent and that you're not hunting and searching for, did that parent send me an email? Was it on Google Classroom? Where did this communication come from? And the reason I say that is if it's hard, you won't do it. There's so many other things going on in your life, which if you go back a few episodes, you can talk about work-life balance in the classroom coffee break. But you need to make it easy on yourself so that you can be consistent. Another way to be proactive in your communication is communicate the good stuff. I know a couple years ago, I had found a deal somewhere online where we could get postcards. So I had Fliver postcards made. I had enough for every student. I think we had 150. So I just passed them out to all of our primetime teachers, and everybody was able to send just a quick little note home saying, little Jimmy did a great job on this project, or Jane did fantastic on her presentation, whatever it was, communicating the good stuff. Because you know how it is whenever you get a call from the school, you're like, oh, here we go, what happened? Well, it's awesome to break that cycle and send something positive home. And I would argue that your first communication home to a parent needs to be something positive. And it can be a simple email. It can be just a note you throw in their backpack. anything to establish that communication line in a positive way so that if you do have to send negative communications home, there's already been something established. Now, kind of an easier way to do this is if you go to the office, they typically have a way of printing you out labels. And what I did is I went and I said, can I just get an address label for every one of my primetime students? And our secretary is amazing. She was able to do it right away. And every day during prep, I would just send 1 or 2 notes home, right? So they didn't all go out at the same time, and that's okay. I waited until something happened, and then when I was done with my sticky sheet, I knew that I had sent a note home to every one of my primetime students with a positive note telling their parents something great that they had done in my class. So another way to be proactive is to be clear and specific with your communication. And my little note here says, avoid teacher jargon. Well, that is double fold, if not triple fold, in the Army. We have so many acronyms that you could speak almost completely in acronyms. So make sure that you are being clear and concise. An example would be, instead of saying, little Johnny is not meeting classroom expectations, be specific on exactly what little Johnny is doing. Johnny has been leaving his seat frequently during instruction, and we're working on staying focused. So something specific, because the parents aren't necessarily going to know your classroom expectations unless you have it posted somewhere or unless your student brings it home somewhere. But at the same time, that's not what you're worried about. I can say you're not meeting the classroom expectations. I might have 5 of them, right? Which one? So be specific, be clear, be direct, not dramatic, stick to the facts, try to keep your feelings out of it. If we go back a few episodes to the SEL, we can practice some of that emotional intelligence, understand that whenever we hear something bad about ourselves or our children, it's going to elate some kind of emotional response. So we need to practice our emotional intelligence, make sure that we're not flying off the handle, make sure that we're not being aggressive towards that parent to cause their emotions to rage out of control. So be clear, be specific, and just stick to the facts. And the last thing I'll say about proactive communication is setting boundaries. You are absolutely allowed to set those boundaries and let the parents know, hey, I do not check my school email after 4 p.m. I just don't. If you send me something after 4 p.m., I will get to it the next day. And remember that your parents are adults too. They have jobs and clubs and church and whatnot. So they totally understand that. But if you don't set that boundary, that parent is going to send an email at 7 o'clock. You're not going to respond until the next day. And maybe they've already sent 2 or 3 more emails. Hey, why didn't you respond? Why didn't you respond? Are you ignoring me? Have you given up on my child? All these types of things can be avoided simply by communicating those boundaries. And maybe your boundary is the method of communication. Hey, I ask that you don't text me unless it's an emergency. I ask that you stick to email. I ask that you make sure you call the office so they can ring my phone. Whatever those boundaries are, you need to communicate them so that you can streamline this whole communication business. So now we're going to talk about something I'm sure that you are trying to get out of this episode the whole time, and that's handling those tough conversations. This is maybe a student did something they're not supposed to. Maybe they're going to be suspended. Maybe they have a detention. Maybe you had to get law enforcement involved. But these tough conversations sometimes happen at the administrator level, principal, assistant principal, counselor, but sometimes they happen at your level. So let's go through some tactics, techniques, and procedures, you're welcome, Army listeners, for dealing with those hard conversations. And the first one we mentioned was stick to the facts. Bring your data, bring your example, and you're not sharing your opinions. You're only sharing evidence on this one. And here's another thing. If you're witnessing certain behaviors in the classroom, 9 times out of 10, those behaviors are happening somewhere else, either in another class, at a different club, at home. So stick to the facts, bring your evidence, and be prepared to be attacked on that a little bit. And that's okay. That's what you're there for. But this is a tough conversation. So the second part is to remain calm, stay respectful. Remember that emotional intelligence. We're going to have emotions flooding the room. We need to be the ones that are keeping it calm and keeping us on point. Now, if that parent just wants to vent, maybe you just need to let them vent for a minute and then get back to that calm, respectful tone, staying on topic. Now, another way to handle those tough conversations is show that you have been proactive in trying to curb that behavior or fix the issue. And that means that coming in to the meeting with the parent or the conversation, have some proposed solutions. And don't just present them as this is what we're going to do, but talk with that parent about how they feel about maybe we put this student on a contract. Maybe we have them check in and check out every day with the responsibility room. What is the parent's opinion? Do they have things that they know they can use as leverage that we can also be on the same page with? I've seen this happen with phones where a student will have to check in and check out every period, and that's fine. And if they don't meet those expectations, maybe they lose their phone for the night. And sometimes that's a great motivator. The bottom line is getting teachers and parents to work together. And the last part I'll say about handling tough conversations is make sure that you document. And this isn't necessarily for a gotcha moment, but this is to cover not just yourself, but also to help the student out. Because if you have that hard conversation, say on October 1st, and then you end up having another hard conversation on November 1st, you need to have some kind of evidence, some kind of documentation, so you can show that you've been trying, but also show what hasn't worked so you know what not to do again. So a couple of really easy ways to do this. First off, if you have a phone conversation with a parent or maybe a small team meeting talking about a specific student, just send yourself a quick email, or even send that email to the team so that everybody's on the same page and say, this is what I observed during our conversation. Would you like to add anything? And if nothing else, it puts a timestamp on it and it puts your thoughts down before you get lost in the next lesson or the next meeting or the next baseball practice or whatever's happening. So make sure that you document. Just an example of this is I had a student who got put on a contract, and the first hour teacher would give them their contract. I was their last hour teacher, so I was supposed to sign it at the end of the day. So the first day the student didn't have it, asked him where it was. He said he lost it. I said, oh, okay. So I just opened up a draft email. Monday, this is the date. So-and-so did not have his contract today. He said he lost it. And I just kept that as a draft until the next day. Tuesday, same thing. Wednesday, same thing. Thursday, same thing. So I just started a draft on Monday. And then on Fridays, I would send that to the team, to the admin, to his team, so that everybody knew where we were in that process. So then when the parent comes back in and says, hey, these contracts, they're not working, we have some evidence and some data and say, you know what, you're right. They're not working because 14 days in a row, it was lost or whatnot. So just some simple ways. I like email. Just you can schedule it to send it to yourself. Let's say you have a meeting again on November 1st. You're going to recap on December 1st. You can schedule that email to send to you on November 29th so that it pops in the top of your inbox and you can review it. All right, so let's talk about keeping the relationship going. We've talked about sending good messages home. We've talked about sending tough messages home. And now let's talk about keeping it going. And a good way to do that is to check in regularly. Not every message needs to be urgent. It could just be a simple email, maybe once a week, once a month, to all of your students saying, hey, this is what we're doing in class. Here's what's coming up on the weekend, whatnot. I know our admin does a fantastic job of that. We get a weekly bulletin every week. They update the Facebook page. It's fantastic. But some kind of regular communication home that isn't always a great thing or isn't always a win, just simple information. And again, choose your method of how you do that. Maybe you have a blog, maybe you have a YouTube channel, and you just send that out to the parents and say, hey, here's an update on our class. So keep it regular. And in that regular communication, involve the parents in learning. You can share resources, events, or ways that they can support learning at home. I know as a history teacher, we have all kinds of things that are happening in real world right now in real time that I like to link back to the history that we're learning about. And this is something I'm really bad at. I'm not good at all at keeping the relationship going. I talk a lot with parents, but I don't have like a regular communication method. So if you have something that works really great for you, drop it in the comments below, because I would like to be better. As I'm doing this, I'm thinking, going back to my student teacher, maybe just a weekly YouTube update of, hey, this is what we're talking about. This is what we're doing. That might be a fun way to involve parents as well. And the last part I'll say about keeping that relationship going is be human. You're not a robot. It's okay to show your personality. It's okay to show your humor. Let parents see the real you, the professional version, not the version that you show to your close friends, but also know that parents are people too, and they have their own sets of chaos. You may have parents that are single parents working two jobs and they don't get to see their kids as much as they would like. You might have parents that they work shift work, so sometimes they're home, sometimes they're not. You see them at a basketball game, you don't see them for 2 weeks. Just understand that they have other obligations, to include a lot of them have other kids, other responsibilities. Maybe they have elder family members that they're trying to take care of as well. So everybody has their own set of chaos. So it's okay to be a regular person. So the bottom line when it comes to parental communication is it doesn't have to be perfect. It just has to be there. Parents want to know their child is seen, supported, and safe. They want to understand that if they have an issue, they can contact you and you will contact them. And when parents and teachers are on the same page, it's the students who really benefit. So if you got something out of this episode, I ask that you like, subscribe, share with a friend. Until the next episode of Classroom Coffee Break, keep growing, keep learning, and keep making a difference. And one more thing. During this summertime, I'm actually going to just be pushing out an episode every 2 weeks just to kind of keep up. We have a vacation planned. I have to be gone for 2 weeks with the Army. I know teachers are the same way. They're going to be off on vacations and who else knows what. So you won't have as much time to listen to podcasts. So you can plan on the Classroom Coffee Break coming out every other week until school starts again. Probably that first week of September, we'll go back to once a week. So that means that this summer is a perfect time to get caught up. Go back to episode 1, which when I rewatch it is terrible. But you can go through and we have several episodes out there. And I really thank you for stopping by your Classroom Coffee Break.